And this is actually for two specific reasons. Reason number one, I teach debate and communication all around the world. And I was asked by tournament directors to speak maybe a bit about communication, general communication strategies that are, relevant and persuasive in all the different cultural environments. Because we live in so many different cultures. In so many different cultures, different things are relevant, are interesting, are persuasive, are normal. Culture is, to be honest, defined by what do we perceive as normal. For some people, something is normal. For some other people, something else is normal. We have all these unwritten rules that we shouldn't even speak about, and we all stick to them. And it's hard to see over this sometimes, and it's really hard to communicate in these different environments. So I was asked to, because I also teach communication philosophy, not just debate. I was asked to go through intercultural communication persuasive principles, something that is persuasive in all the cultures, and then apply this to debate. Right? So to show you how to facilitate this in international debate environments when you do have international judges. But then secondly, also, what is the problem? What we realize is the problem of a lot of United States or Northern Americans or let's say Anglo-Saxonic debaters that come from this debating environment. A lot of times what you do is you only get advices from competitive debate coaches, and you get these very technical advices, what to do within a debate round. But then sometimes you come to real life and you need to facilitate these strategies in a real life speech, right? And this is why I'm going to give you a lot of examples of these persuasive strategies from business, from culture, from academia, to show how this should and can be facilitated in different environments. But always we are going to show why, how, and where should this be done within the debate. So this is what I was asked to do. This is what I am going to do. So now maybe just I still would like to have an answer from you. Do you have any specific expectation from this session? Because if there is a specific question that you hope to be answered or anything, I'm more than willing to answer. So maybe just you can write it in a chat. You can unmute yourself. Just the topic that they asked me to lecture about, the last topic that was written was persuasive and argumentative strategies, intercultural communication principles. Line. So why did you decide for this lecture? Why did you come? What do you expect from it? What do you want me to answer? Let's go. If not, if you don't say anything now, that's the capitalist freedom. If you don't say anything now and then you don't like it in the end, then it's your responsibility, right? Even though I made the session. But if you say something now, then at least you have a chance. How and when to apply analogies. Okay, Elizabeth, yeah, this is very, very, I'll speak more about this tomorrow in session on argumentation, when I'm going to talk about how to form also principled arguments, when I'm going to show how to create principled arguments also, and how to compare arguments and weigh arguments with using analogies. So maybe this will be more about tomorrow, but for sure, that's a good question about analogies. Grace, you had something?
I was just gonna say, sometimes when I get a case or emotion, I feel like I'm being a little bit offensive, or I'm always scared that I'm going to be offensive. So maybe just how to tread on that better.
Okay, so this is what I was a bit afraid. These are very specific questions and are very good questions, right? Analogies for sure. Tomorrow when I'm going to speak about argumentation, I'll be very detailed on that. Being offensive, this is a very good question. My answer to this directly would be, if you are rational and clear and link things back to the motion, there is no way to be offensive, right? If you're rational enough, if you're willing to show with arguments that your stance makes sense, that's good. What do Americans think is persuasive that isn't? Okay, that's a good question. Okay, I will. I mean, obviously, Liana, you could expect what my answer would be. That just by mentioning individual right and liberties, it's something that persuades people. It doesn't all around the globe. and you can see that in everyday political life, but also in debate, right? Just referring to individual rights and just referring to liberties and freedoms, this is not a bulletproof argument. So maybe this is something that for sure you should never ever assume that will win you the debate. I will speak. Okay, let's see where we get. Let's see where we get. I actually do have. I actually do have some things written. I'll try to follow them because because there is no board. There needs to be some kind of supportive material for the session. So I do have a few slides ready for you. I'll just go through these principles that stick to all the cultures. Okay, let me just share my screen. Okie dokie. Okay, so the first principle that is true in all the cultures, and all the cultures around the globe will go for it, is curiosity. What do I mean by that? By this, I simply mean that people always want to test your background story. I'll give you an example from my own life. A year ago, I went with my niece to the store to buy a shampoo for her mom, right? And her mom told us that we need to buy a shampoo that is a green color, whatever, Garnier something. I have no idea. I remember it should be green, right? This is what I remember. It should be green. And I knew it should be green. So we came to the store and I was like saying to my little niece, okay, so are you going to take this for your mom, right? Are you going to take it from the shelf? Take the green one. And she said, yes, I will, but I'm taking the black one. And I was like, no, take the green one. And she was, no, the black one, no, the green one, no, the black one, no, the green one, no, the black one. And then in the end, I was like, okay, take the black one. And she was like, why? Right? And at that point, like, she totally got me, right? She totally revealed that I didn't have the answer for that, right? She totally got me with the question, why? But the thing is, why did she ask that? Did she really wanted to know why did I change my mind? No, she was testing my background story. I was the authority in the situation. I was somebody who she trusted. I was somebody who was supposed to know everything. And with the question, why, she was testing my background story. And this is why children are asking questions. When they ask the question, the eternal philosophical question, why is the sky blue? They don't ask this question because they are, let me now think why the sky could be blue. It's not that what's on their mind. They are literally testing the background stories of the authorities. They want to know if these big others, the ones who should know, will have the background story and will have answers to everything, will have all these answers, why. And this is something that you can, with empirical anthropological studies, find in all the cultures around the globe. And this is what you need to facilitate in the debate. This is why, because people want to check your background stories, you necessarily constantly need to be answering the question why, not just questioning what. Let me give you the example from politics. In 2016, I can stop sharing now, we'll show the next slide later. In 2016 elections in USA, right? Who was leading when the campaign has actually started, Clinton or Trump? Obviously, regardless of who you support, it was quite sure that that Clinton was leading the polls, right? But then somehow Trump has won. Obviously, a lot of reasons. We can discuss this endlessly. But if you look at the campaign, what was the biggest difference between the campaign? If I ask you now why Trump wanted to vote for him, what was his answer? Why you should give him the ballot, right? Just somebody tell me why. To what? I just somebody can write in the chat because I know you know the answer. So why?
He was like an unconventional politician. Like,
really? No, this is what he was. So he came up and said, so I'm so unconventional. No, what did he say?
He was very crude and,
Oh, you want to be too smart. You're outsmarting yourself.
Make America great again.
Yes, to make America great again. We all remember that. This is why he was saying he should become a president. Now tell me why Hillary Clinton should become a president. What was her point? Exactly my point, right? Like we obviously can outsmart ourselves now and we can explain why and we can give a lot of good arguments. Nobody remembers. And that was the biggest difference between the campaign. That Trump was very, very explicit. What is the background story why he's doing? What is his ideology when where is he coming from? What is his background principle to make America great again? All other things, you know, how are we making it? Who is in making it? All this is secondary. Firstly, we're making America great again. Hillary, you know, she was firstly, what is she doing? She's becoming a president. How is she doing? You know, she will help she will still be, you know, globally involved in neoliberal economy. She will help the minority. She will be progressive. And why is she doing? Nobody remembers anymore what's the principle behind all this. And this was this was the big difference between the campaign. And you see, you remember one campaign, you don't remember the other campaign. The same is with debate cases. Let's go to the business. What would you say, which is the company which has nice products, but for sure they're totally overselling them? They are the company overselling their products simply because of their PR and advertising. What's the company? What would you say? Just write in the chat, what is the company that you would say is really good in promoting their products and overselling them? They are brilliant. I have all of them almost. Amazon, not really a company, I'd say, right? But I would agree Amazon, but Apple for sure, right? Now, if you look at the Apple strategy, and you can even see some internal strategical documents on advertising, how do they advertise? They don't start with the question, what are they selling to you? They are not telling you, we're selling you this and this computer. How is it working? Oh, this characteristic, this is why it is the best. And why are we giving this with you? And then in the end, something. They always start with first little concentric circle. They say, we are giving you the best customer experience, best consumer experience. How are we giving that to you? Then they go broader and then they say, we have the best designers, we have the best software, we have the best blah, blah, blah. And then in the end, if you want all these are all the products, all the whats that we are giving it to you. And with one answer to what they are giving to you, the moment when they win that answer, that principle, the answer, the best consumer experience, they immediately get the advertising and the campaign for all the products that are in the end on the last concentric circle, where is the answer to what are they actually selling. So you see also in business, this strategy all around the globe works. Try to facilitate that in the debate. 3 things that you need to know for your debate cases. 2 things for micro analysis, 1 thing for macro analysis. For micro analysis, when you're developing your arguments, and I'm sharing the screen again, you always should ask also the question why on meta level and on the content level. On the meta level, you need to tell me, why do you have this argument in the debate? What is the technical role of the argument in the debate? And on the more content level, you need to tell me, why is this argument important? And this is what you should start with, or at least have at the beginning. At least immediately after you tell me what you're going to prove me, also tell me, why are you doing that? Why do you have this in the debate? Why are you using my time? Because if I will not trust that there is something behind that, if this will be just thrown out there, I will not remember. As I don't, even though I support Hillary Clinton, do not remember what her arguments were, because I do not remember what was behind. And then second thing, always make your ideology and your principle explicit. Make it explicit. Why are you doing something? For example, when you had this big debate on for example regional autonomy, maybe you know the example when the Catalonia in the Spain, in Europe, they had a referendum. They decided that they want to go out, right? They out of Spain, and then the Spain said, nah, even though you have this self-determination right, even though you have this referendum, we do not allow you to do that. And then the European Union said, we support Spain, we are not allowing you to go out. And people were very shocked. And there were quite some good arguments on negative impacts of what would happen if the Catalonia would go out, right? Economic impacts, political impacts, and all this. The most persuasive cases were made when people who were supporting the right to Spain and European Union to prevent self-determination, the best cases were the ones who said, look, this is our ideology. This is the principle. This is where we're going from. What is the principle on the side where you're against self-determination? What is the background story, the ideology, the world vision that you're arguing for when you're against this? What would you say? Write me a principle that you would argue for. Even though you would not make a principled argument, what is the principle that you would argue for? Right? So you need, you know, because if you don't have this, then you just have an argument on economic negative impact. Boo-hoo, I will forget it. Tell me, why do you give me this argument? What is the world that you believe in? What is the ideology? What would you say instead of self-determination? Oh boy, you're against freedom. You're oh, for Americans, that's a big deal. Against self-determination, against individual right. Oh boy, that's a big thing. What would you do instead of that? What would be the principle? You can write it in the chat. You can say whatever you want. What would be the principle? Now you see, it's not that easy. Go, what would you say? Do we have any ideas? How should we govern the international? Yesterday I was talking about core questions that you need to ask yourself. Try to ask yourself a core question. If not with self-determination, how should we govern international community? What kind of international community do we want if not the one governed by self-determination and right to people to just go out of their political units if they want to go, right? What would be the principle? Go, go, go.
Maybe like unification, like unified Spain or
unity, yes, but the problem with this principle is that I can give you 5 examples when unity really was not good. For example, all the decolonial struggle, right? Let's say, are you defending unity when the former colonies were separating? Probably not. So unity is not the overlying principle that, you know, your background story is bad, boo, bad. I don't want to vote for this side. Even if you have good arguments, I don't trust your background story and ideology. You're ideologically fishy for me, right? This is what I would say. Order, right? This is how you want your community to be governed. Order and peace and stability. Right? You say, we like self-determination, but we in advance tell you, dear judge, we like order, we like stability. And in name of stability, in name of peace, in name of order, we are going to give you argument of bad economic impact, of political instability, of how this, you know, and now I'll be, now it makes sense. Now I know you want to make America great again, if you know what I mean, right? I know what's your background story. And you can use this in everyday life. By the way, once I was arguing at one of the, I sometimes make political comments at the Slovenian TV. And I knew that there will be one person against me, and I knew that this person is going to tell me immediately after I speak. I knew that this person is going to tell me, oh, but you're only saying this because you're a Marxist. I knew that they are going to tell this to me. So what is the best defense to defend yourself? My first statement before this other person has even spoken, I said, so thank you for this question. From a Marxist perspective, this is what I would say. And you know, now the other person was, oh, but you're a Marxist. And I was like, yes, I told you that at the beginning. This was a Marxist perspective. Now engage with the argument, right? And the argument from the other side was totally, you know, castrated, was impotent, was not relevant anymore, because I revealed why am I here? Because I wanted to make Marxist comment, right? Why am I here? Because I want order. Why was Trump there? Because he wanted to make America great again. Why does Apple want you to spend $1,000 for a stupid red new iPhone? Because, you know, customer experience. Why was Hillary should be the president? Yeah, so many arguments, right? Let's make a case about it, but we don't remember. So this is one strategy that will help you in business, academic writing, but also in the debate. make it explicit what's your background, make it explicit what is your strategy, make it explicit. Here, guys, look, here we are going to go full neoliberal. You know, we do know that sometimes you don't like this, but here we do know that neoliberal story around the world is kind of falling apart. But look, from a neoliberal perspective, these are now the arguments. And if you want to discuss, we can also discuss neoliberalism later, but this is where we're coming from. And everything, and now people will not be, okay, this is what he's saying, this is what he told us, but what he's really saying, right? They won't have this question. They will know what's your background story. They will not test your background story. They will engage with your arguments. So why always? On more macro level, where are you coming from? What is your principle? And on a micro level, why do you have this argument in the debate? Always necessarily. Why? Oh, second one, backwards rationality, the principle. I like to say as a philosopher that people are not rational, they are only rationalizing. So we don't make rational decisions, I believe. We are only making very good, you know, reasoning for backward, right? We only, for our past decision, we can know how to rationalize them. I'm sure you were all there, right, once. Let's try this. I'm going to give you a short sequence of numbers. Let's make a short experiment. I'm going to give you a short sequence of numbers, and the ones who is going to realize what's the next number. I'm paying for a non-alcoholic beverage the next time I meet you. I hope this is non-alcoholic beverage. I hope this will be soon. You know, I'm planning to be in the United States as soon as they open. And as soon as I'm going to be sure that they are going to leave me back in Europe after I visit your state. But I promise that I will meet you once, and I'll pay for non-alcoholic beverage for the ones, for the person who realized that, who gets the right answer. However, I'm going to write my answer now so that you won't say that I have cheated. Okay. So I'm going to write my answer. Okay. I'm now writing down my answer. Okay, I circled it. The numbers are 2, 5. Wait, I need to write down because 2, 5, 11, 23. The first one who says or writes it in the chat that it's also correct is the winner and gets a non-alcoholic beverage. I hope this is in line with the equity policy of the institute. We can offer awards for students. It's an easy one. Come on. 2, 5. 47. Who said that?
Me.
Diane. Okay. Do we have any other answer, Diane? Despite the Diane one.
Do I have another answer?
Do we have a different answer? Michelle Lee is saying 45. So we have 45 from Michelle Lee and 47 from Diane. Do we have a different answer maybe? You know, just checking so that you won't say that I caught you soon and whatever. Okay, we don't. I do realize why you said that. You know, it's multiplied with 2 plus 1, right? So it's very clear, right? 5 multiplied 2, 10 plus 1, 11. 11 multiplied 2 plus 1, 23. Okay, easy. Well, the answer was, so that you will not say I've cheated, here was my answer, 1,289. That was my answer that I wrote down before, right? Why? Because the only pattern and the only structure and the only rule that I had in my mind when I was giving you the sequence was that the next number needs to be bigger. Everything else was just a coincidence. This is how I play that game. And now I see your faces. Now I see your face. Ah, come on, that's stupid. We feel cheated. That's a cheap joke, blah, blah, blah. Exactly these faces is what I wanted to prove you. How human brains work is immediately when we see something, we try to create a pattern out of it. And we are very, very good in rationalizing the history. Oh, we knew that, now for back, we know that we knew that French Revolution would happen already 2 years ago. There were signs for the revolution, right? Oh, come on, no. This is just how we are rationalizing for the back. And immediately what you did when you got my sequence, you try to see, you try to find out a pattern, and then you were sticking to a pattern. And now I gave you the real answer. I did not cheat it. I follow all the rules, and I gave you logically, reasonably, equally possible pattern, but you all feel annoyed and you all feel cheated. Even though I gave you rational arguments for my side of the motion, even I gave you rational arguments for my proposal, you are all annoyed and don't really buy me, right? Why? Because your brains, your emotions got adapted to the first pattern that you bought into. And this is what's happening, right? Immediately when you start with argumentation, immediately when you start with your cases, judges, audiences, other people, they get ideas in their mind. What are you going to say? And even though you make brilliant arguments in the end, but they're not the same arguments as judges thought that they will be. And judges, you know, judges are experienced. They already heard so much arguments, and immediately you say something, they have the idea, they get the idea association in the mind, right? And if this is not the same argument that they have expected, they're going to be annoyed, as you are now, even though I gave you the reasonable explanation and evidence why my answer is equally correct as yours. But judges, even though they are going to get reasonable explanation from you, how you are correct in your proposal, in your model, in your whatever, they're still going to be, oh, but you know, they won't like it because they were expecting something else. So this is why it is so very important that you are constantly in the debate, keep track of what is the pattern of what you are explaining, so that you state what is the conclusion already at the beginning. Don't tell me substantive on Russia. Don't tell me substantive on instability. Tell me what you are going to prove me. Before you start proving me, tell me the way you are going to get there. I'm going to tell you that Russia is going to do this. This is what I'm going to prove you through two different ways, by showing this mechanism, and also by implying this and this example. So that's the way, and now let's go into it. So make a pattern for the judge, make the path how this will look like, so the judges will not be surprised during the speech, right? The same go for strategy. Make your strategy explicit, right? How are you winning the debate? Are you just showing that there are more impacts? And dear judge, look, all the arguments, we are going to show that there are more harms on their side, more benefits on our side. So all we want from you is to weigh the impacts. Okay, I know what's your path to win. I know what I'm going to do, but tell me what I will need to do. Or you're going to tell me that there are inherent flaws in capitalism, that there are less flaws in communism, and that comparatively there is more inequality in capitalism than in communism, right? Let's say that these are the three things. Now tell me, these are the three things we are going to prove. For the first one, we are going to talk about inherent flaws, especially about how capitalism leads to crisis. Here we are going to try to use the argument about how profits necessarily in the end are decreased because market gets too stuck. In the second argument, when we're going to talk how communism is great, we are going to blah, 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 right? You see, I got stuck with the point how communism is great. Haha, I didn't know what to say. So you see, make it very, very explicit. I don't know if you know Woody Allen movies. I would not mention his name too much because he's a problematic person. But you know, it's always the question if you should consume the art of deeply morally questionable authors. Regardless of Woody Allen as a person, his movies always have the narrator, right? Narrators is constantly saying what is happening. This is happening now. Then he went there. Then he thought that. Then he kissed her. He didn't know to kiss her. Blah, blah, blah. This is what you need to tell me. Constantly what is now happening. Create the pattern for the judge, because otherwise the same will happen what just happened to you. Okay, next one. Oh, I love that one. Authority. This is something that goes all around the culture. People trust experts. People trust people that they believe that are experts on the topic. Now I'm going to give you two examples on that. The example from business that I really love was they made a research and like two experiments. In the first one, there were 3 random people that work in the call center for the internet issues, something like that, right? And it was simply about you know, what do I do? My router is not working. My internet is not working. Oh, please restart the router. Oh, how much does the new package cost? Oh, it's $20 per blah. So very simple questions. People were calling. These three employers were giving exactly the same answers. They were scripted, all this. And in the end, the callers, the customers who didn't know that that's an experiment, they have evaluated the answers that they got. And the evaluation was 7.8 out of 10. So that's quite high for a random call center where people are totally annoyed because nothing is working and they don't know how to restart the router. Quite good, 7.5 or 9, right? Then the second experiment. The same thing happened with one difference. The difference was that when a person got a call, they said, oh, so you want to know about the price for our new internet package? Oh, I'll connect you with our expert for prices. And then a random new person, like literally a random person picked up the phone. Oh, you want to know about the connectivity issues? Oh, I'll connect you with our expert for routers. And random, right? And they were just circling among each other, right? They were giving exactly the same scripted answers, right, to the exactly same questions. And in the end, the final average grade was 9.4, right? That's almost 2, or maybe that's fake news. I don't know exactly, but it was around 2-point difference. So 2-point difference for same questions with same answers that worked the same with one difference. People thought that they're speaking with the authority. People really like to trust experts. A second example, do you know the Milgram experiment, sociological experiment? Do you know it? The Milgram experiment is a horrible, I mean, it's quite scary experiment. What they did is, look, they said that they're doing the experiment and that they called the person, and there was a scientist in, in uniform doing the experiment, obviously an actor, and they said, look, in the other room that you do not see, there is a person. And you're going to ask this person questions. And when this person is going to give you a wrong answer, you're going to press to send an electroshock to that person. And for each new wrong answer, you're going to increase the level of electroshock. To calm you down, obviously there was nobody there was no person in the other room. That was the experiment. But each time when these people gave an electroshock, there were some screams, ah, it hurts, please stop it, something like that from the other room. Again, nobody was hurt. All was good. And by the way, when these people said, oh my God, but we should not do that anymore, the other people is, the person there is hurting, there is only one thing that this scientist said. This scientist said, you can stop anytime, we are not forcing you, but this is the scientific experiment. If you want to follow the science and our experiment, you need to do that. If you stop, you will ruin the experiment, but all good. Nobody will be angry, it's fine, right? More than 60% of the people were willing to give the shock so big that it would kill the other person. So more than 60% of the people actually pressed the button that was on the level of risking to kill the other person there, right? Nobody was forcing them. They were just saying, look, if you want to follow the science, this is what we advise you to do, right? And you know what the criteria are. More than 60% of people, right? Because they were following, they wanted to satisfy the authority. They were following the authority, right? So you see how important it is if you have the feeling that somebody's authority to you, you believe them, you follow them, you even, give them the moral judgment, not just that you believe them their arguments and information more like in the call center, you actually give them the authority to make moral judgment for you. By the way, there was a follow-up study made, which I use in my psychoanalytical class constantly with my students, because I have one class where I only teach such social experiments. And the follow-up study was they made the same experiment, but they divided the group of people who they were testing in two parts. One group of people were you know, you would describe them as haters. You know, they hate everybody. You know, go to hell with the system. I really don't want to do that. Blah, blah, blah. The other group of people were social butterflies. They were, no, let's do that. Let's share this on Instagram. Oh, you're so great. Ah, did you get a new haircut? Right. That's so beautiful. It looks brilliant on you. Right. So they were social butterflies and everybody loved them. What do you think, which group, right, gave higher shocks, or which group like had bigger percentage of people who are willing to give a deadly shock? Which group of people? Haters, you know, people who hate everybody and don't care, or social butterflies who love everybody, who are loved by everybody, and so on? Which group of people? What do you think? Social butterflies, correct. Yeah, I told the story in that way, obviously. Why? Because social butterflies usually they build their own identity to because they want to be liked, right? They want to satisfy the authority. They want to get a compliment. They are fishing for compliment. They say nice things, you know, to get nice things back. Haters, they're like, you are the authority, you're the scientist, you know, to hell with this experiment. I'm not killing the people. I don't care what you think about me. Go away. I don't care if you're an authority, right? But the social butterflies are like, oh, my authority, we need to satisfy the science. That's something important. So that's like an interesting addition. But for sure, you can see that we human beings, we do tend to trust the authority. We identify with authority. We even not just trust the information more, we literally even uh, uh, moral judgment, like pass it to the authority, right? And what is now something that you need to take directly to debate out of it? As I wrote here, in every speech, show why your previous speakers have already won the debate. What I say that each speaker after the first speaker of the debate needs to do is only one thing. You have one job. You need to show me why your first speaker has already won the debate, or why, if you're a third speaker, why your second speaker has already won the debate. Of course, you are using several different mechanisms for that. Rebuilding, new arguments, a refutation, rebuttal, a new interpretation, new characterization. Oh my. But the way you need to approach everything after the first speech in terms of bench cohesion and team strategy is, and not just in debate, also in real life meetings, always, even if you're repeating your own speech, or if you're the next one that is speaking in your team, always proceed not just now I am going to win the debate, but always say, look, these are the cards that my first speaker has folded, and this is why these cards are winning the debate. But to show you this, how these cards are winning the debate, I need to, one, rebuild a bit, B, need an, add another example so that you will really understand that card. Oh, I also have a joker card, a new argument that I will add to this deck of cards. I also have a bit of more for the refutation. But in the end, the point is that you always show why the things that happened before has already won the debate or is now winning the debate. And this is how you're going to achieve bench cohesion, but especially this is how you're going to build the authority for your speaker. Right? This is how judge is going to get an 8-minute speech about why your previous speaker was brilliant. So the judge is going to get 8-minute justification why he or she needs to add up points to the first speaker, 8-minute justification why he or she needs to understand how the first speaker has really contributed to the case of the of your side, right? So have this in mind that you need to establish yourself as an authority. Obviously, there are argumentative tricks and how to pace your speech and so on. Little tricks how to create yourself an authority is speak very fastly about detailed information. Because if you speak fastly, still understandable, but fastly, when you're giving me technical information, I'll get the feeling that, you know, that you could mention like 100 pieces of the same information, but you will only give me 2 or 3. And I'll get, oh my, she could speak for a minute about that. She must know a lot. This is the psychological effect that, you know, I have this example from my school. I was asked to give 10 important revolutionary years for the history of Europe by my teacher in my final history exam. And I was like, God, I know 3, 4. And because I speak a bit faster and, you know, very energetically, right? I was like, okay, these 4 are 1492, 1789, 1489, 1914. And then this moment when I didn't know any after it, my teacher said, okay, I see you learn a lot. I gave you A, it's fine, you know it, right? I didn't know any after it. But you see how this simply creates a feeling that you really could speak about it for years, right? Because you mention them very fastly. So when you're only, you know that you can't give all the information, you just give some technicalities, characterizations, characteristics, you know, give them briefly and quickly, still understandable, so that they will know. There are a lot of such little tricks when it comes to numbers, right? Always, this is one not connected to authority, but I'm just going to tell you, always when you have numbers, tell them in relative terms, right? You know, can you imagine the difference between 1 and 10 people? Just nod with head in if you can imagine the difference, yes. Can you imagine the difference between 10 and 100? Can you imagine the difference between 100 and 1000? Can you imagine the difference between 1000 and 10,000? 10,000 and 100,000. 1 million and 2 million. For you, that's the same. That's a bunch of people, right? And then I say Hitler killed 6 million people, Stalin killed 7 million people. That is a million people different. 1 million more people died, and you're like, yeah, that's a lot. Didn't really make an impact. So because we cannot imagine the differences, you always need to say such technical terms in relative numbers, right? You know, Slovenia, by the way, only has 2 million inhabitants. The whole country has 2 million inhabitants, right? So for example, in my debater should say, you know, Stalin has killed half Slovenia more than Hitler. I would be, oh my, that's a lot, right? Or for example, if I say, I don't know, if I come to the conservative areas in Slovenia, instead of saying, oh, there is 200,000 homosexually oriented people in Slovenia, they're like, okay, it's a number, we won't remember it. But if I say, look, there is 1/4 of people homosexuals in Slovenia, they're like, this is, you know, I don't know, this is 2, if we're in group of 8, that means 2 of group of 8. And then immediately they are, oh my, I'm not, I know that I'm not, so who is in this group, right? They immediately are, okay, so that's a number that means something. So always say number in relative terms, right? But back to the authority, you need to build authority for your previous speakers. You need to give judges 8-minute justification why your previous speaker was brilliant. This is how you're going to facilitate Milgram experiment and all this. Okay, sharing my screen to see what's the next one. Oh, scarcity. What is scarcity? Scarcity is a general economic or classical economic principle that says simply people want more of the thing that they can have less. I know that Americans, you have really experienced that with the toilet paper at the beginning of pandemics, right? You know, it would be the same if we would be in the same room now. If I would say, look, we only have 1 bottle of water till the end of the day, you would be, oh my God, we need to get that bottle of water. If I would say we have 10,000 liters of water, you would say, nobody cares, right? Nobody's thirsty. So in first case, you would be like, oh, please, can I have a sip? Can I have a sip? In the second case, the situation would be the same, literally the same. We could have the equal amount of water, because I would just be giving you information. You could have equal, you know, physical needs, but you would want this water so much more or so much less. Depends on how would I present what's the situation with water. And that's the scarcity situation that really plays a big role in our society. I'll give you 2 examples that I really like from economics. In 2000 and that will be fake news because I again don't remember the exact date, but Lufthansa, the airplane company, had 3 daily flights from Berlin to New York. And you know, each flight there were 600 passengers, possibly 600 seats, and each flight was usually just half full, right? So that means, you know, 300 per flight, altogether 900 instead of let's say 1,800. And then they were like, okay, that's just not cool for us. Then they said, we are only going to have 2 flights now. right? And immediately when they announced that they're going to have 2 flights, on average, people bought 1,000 tickets per day from Berlin to for next 3 months, right? The tickets did not, the prices did not went down. Nothing happened in Berlin, no Berlin Wall or communism or anything, right? Nothing happened in New York. New York was not nicer than it was before. Simply the information on the market that this is a scarce resource totally shifted the how people wanted it, the demand. If I give you the from his example from history, from economy, I'm sure that you know that the so-called tulip crisis. Do you know the tulip crisis? You don't? Okay. In Holland, in Netherlands, tulips are very important. You know, they have a whole culture on tulips, economy. Tulips are big. They like flowers and they are big on tulips. And then once there was the economic crisis in one city. It was a city by the sea. It was a port city. And you know, a lot of people have a lot of money, but because of the inflation, I hope you know what inflation is. It means that money, you know, just doesn't mean anything. You can have a lot of money, but you know, because the money that has no value, you cannot buy things with this money. They were poor. But the same year, it was kind of connected. There were also that the year after a lot of bad winters, and there were really a little amount of tulips present, right? So the paradox happened. The people who had 2 or 5 tulips and had the ability to create a lot of tulips out of that, they were considered extremely rich. But the people who had a lot of money, like million, they were poor. So literally there was this situation. I had, let's say I had 3 tulips. I am now rich. Liana had $1 million. She's now poor. And we are exactly in the same situation as we are now. She's rich, she is poor, I'm rich. But then what happened is a big port came to the, big ship came to the port. Ship, like moving ship, not the ship as an animal. Okay. So, so the big ship came to the port, and there was a rumor, maybe fake news, nobody really knows. But there was somebody who was sure that there is like 2,000 tulips on the ship. So the tulip crisis ended, right? We have a lot of tulips. And there was a person running through the streets of this city, screaming, we have tulips, ship with the tulips in the city. And this exact moment when this person is screaming that, I, who have some tulips, I now become poor, and Liana, who has $1 million, now become rich because she can go and buy the tulips. Literally nothing changes in the reality. She has exact same amount of things in her house and money in her hand. I have exact same amount of things in my hand, but just because there is a news on the question, is this a scarce resource or not, the whole economy totally shifts. So much about how fragile is our economy. Like one news can totally shift everything. By the way, this is how the stock market works, right? The stock markets, by the way, a quick crash course in how the fragility of stock market. Stock market, you know, people like to tell you that in stock market, you need to be good in expecting what will happen. No, you need to be good in saying how the stocks will move, right? No. There is a double belief. You need to be good in predicting what other people will predict the stocks will be in the next month or the next day. So it's not so much about only predicting what will happen with stocks. It's what other people will think that will happen with stocks. It's always this double belief, right? It's the same with money, by the way. I would now show you a bill, a dollar bill, whatever. I don't have it. Okay. What? It's a piece of paper. Why does it have any value? Literally, you can't do anything with it. Let's see if I have. Let's see if I have one. So that we really, I literally don't have one. Oh, I do. Let's see what we can do with it. We literally cannot do anything with it. We can't do anything with it. It has no use value. And maybe we can roll it and do something with it. I don't want to go into that because it's being recorded. But you know, we can't do anything with it. But what? But why does it have value? How come it does have value? Say me in the chat. Why does it have value? Even though we can't do anything with it. I mean, it's a piece of paper. We can't do anything with it. Why does it have value? What gives it the value? Only one thing. we all pretend that it has value. This is the only reason why the money has value, because we value it. Yes, very good, Claire. It was private message. Because we pretend. I give this to Claire, she will give it back. We are just pretending. We know it has no value, but it's pretending. So our economy, if enough people at some moment would stop pretending that this is 10 euros, then this would not be 10 euros anymore. Right? So much about how very much is on just only on the information about it, right? And it's even more. If I ask you, Claire, you said, oh, but we value it, we pretend that it's value. But then I ask you, but why are you so stupid? Why do you pretend? Why am I so stupid? Why do I pretend? Am I just following like a sheep, right? This time as an animal, right? Am I just following somebody else? Why do I pretend? The same double belief. Because I expect that everybody else will pretend. And because I pretend that Liana will pretend, then I will also pretend. And because I pretend that we all both are pretending, this is why it's working. At the moment where we stop pretending that nobody has this anymore, that this is a scarce resource, it has no value. So you see how on our psychological mechanisms and financial mechanisms and political mechanisms, the moment when you present something as a scarce resource, it can totally change the perception. This is why, especially the second line here is important for you in the debate. Present the world without the benefit that you are offering. So sometimes you don't need to make positive arguments about why something is good, but simply make arguments how the world will look like if we would not have this, right? For example, if you would have now time, if you would be in a long course with me, I would tell you, make a long argument on why freedom of speech is important. I think in the end, I'm not sure that you would offer me a lot of normative argumentation. You would offer me a lot of description. Oh, freedom of speech is human right. Oh, it's in this charter. Oh, it's this and this. I would be, yeah, this is a description of freedom of speech. Thank you very much. I also know that. Why it is important. You would struggle, but you would become very persuasive, even in a normative way, if you would simply say, look, let's imagine the world without it. Let's describe what would be the world, what would the world look like if there would be no freedom of speech. And I can tell you from the experience, sorry for not having time to go through this with you, because I'm sure that you would do that. One of the things that we would get, what does the world without freedom of speech look like, would be, you can't criticize politicians. Oh my, from the situation where you have a statement, you can't criticize politicians. You know how many arguments you can make out of this? Democracy is not functional anymore, because democracy is built on checks and balances and being re-elected because constant critiques and blah, blah, blah. And then immediately you get so much field, so much argument for normative argumentation. And not just that you get field for new arguments, you also sound persuasive to the judge, who in the end will probably need to decide between two principles, between two things that are important. If you will start to explaining how the world look like without this, that would be good. This is also why the tipping point analysis, I see, I don't know if this is an intentional strategy of USA national team sometimes, Liana, but I see that, I don't know if you're coached to do that, or this is just like what you do as good speakers, but the USA team a lot of time uses the tipping point strategy. Like, if we don't do that now, it's irreversible and we will not be able to go back. Or it is now the moment when we can still do it. This is literally actually facilitating the idea of scarce resource, right? Because something is so important, and if we lose it, this is what will happen. So don't necessarily try to do the positive things why something is important, but go vice versa. What would the world look like if something would be missing? Okay, let's continue. Let's see what else do we have in the reciprocity, consistent. Okay, let's go. Okay, reciprocity, we'll do it a quick one. Reciprocity, you know, people just tend to repay in kind. In every society, there is some kind of tendency that if you give something to people, they like to give it back to you. They feel like they are, without any coercion, they feel pressure to repay you. Now let's go into business. Let's see if we have entrepreneurs among us. There was a research. people wanted to get more tips for their waiters in their bar, right? And they decided to give one little candy together with the bill, right? And then what happened? Because of reciprocity, people gave higher tips. Make sense? Perfect. Then they gave two candies, 1 and 2. What happened? What do you think what happened? Think about what do you think what happened after people got 2 instead of 1 candy. Something very, very, very interesting happened. Do you think it more tips? Yes, but so marginally more that candies were much, much more expensive. So if the first jump was, I don't remember the exact numbers again, but I know it was between 10 and 15. The second jump, when they offered 2 candies instead of 1, was just for less than 1% jump. And they were like, oh boy, that doesn't, that's not okay. So they tried to facilitate more this idea of reciprocity. And they did one thing with the candy, and it worked, and the tips went up for 25%. Oh boy, that was a jump for 100% from the previous one. What did they do? What would you do? Let's see if we have entrepreneurs and somebody who should open their own business. What do you think they have done? They try to facilitate this reciprocity, but obviously if you just give more, it doesn't work. Hint, if you just give more impacts and more impacts and more impacts in the debate, at some point it's just like, oh boy, that's so many impacts, right? At some point, it does not, it does not, the ability to of the judge to accept this as an amazing new thing. Not really. Give 2 different things. They didn't do that. And that would be also kind of maybe expensive for them, right? New thing. They did something with the candy or candies. Okay, I'll tell you. They said, thank you for coming to eat. Here's a candy for you. And then they hand it to the customer. This is what Clara said. Yeah, but they kind of did it also in the first example already, right? They said, thank you, that's for you. You know what they did? They still gave 2 candies, but they gave 1 candy. Thank you, here's the bill. Then they turned around and then they said, oh, and for you, another one. And when they did that, the people got the same benefit. They got 2 candies. They got nothing else. They got 2 candies. So their material situation was exactly the same as the material situation of all the other people who got 2 candies. But the difference was that it felt personalized and that they felt unique and that it felt exclusive. So people really care for uniqueness and exclusivity. And this is something that judges will want from you. I will not speak a lot about that because that's very, very clear when you are obviously dealing with argumentation, but make sure that not just to facilitate this psychological thing, also to facilitate very logically important parts of argumentation, that always you make your arguments about the things that are exclusive and unique only to your side. This is one of the rare situations when this psychological mechanism, philosophical, cultural mechanism coincides with the logical mechanism, right? You need to make arguments that about only things that are on your side. I was having an office hours with one student. We made the student made great arguments for UBI, why we should support universal basic income. And the first argument of the student was the responsibility of the state to help poor people. What was my first response? How do I know that's unique to your side? The other side can say, instead of giving cash transfers to everybody, which is a definition of universal basic income, opposition may have a contra model, which will be, we are having welfare systems, services, free public education, free public transport. So we also have the argument responsibility of the state. We're just giving it with the different mechanism, right? So in the statement of the argument, there was no exclusivity. It was not personalized for their side of the case. It was no unique element. So make sure whatever you do in the debate, however you approach people when you're trying to convince them, always only speak about the things that are only on your side. Do not lose time with things that are on both sides. always only on the things that are on your side. Okay, that's about reciprocity. What else do we have? Okay, consistency. Oh, I love this one. That's a personal one. People align with their previous commitments. So if people commit to something, there are psychological components of human psychology, which are connected with the fact that we are a being of a language, that we communicate. We don't have time to go into that. But there is a cross-cultural universality that when people commit to something, they feel bad if later on they would do something that, you know, disregard their previous commitment. I mean, I'm not saying that people don't do that, but if they are aware of the fact that they are, you know, that they've accepted one part of argument and now the second one follows from that, and now they disagree with that, they would feel bad. They would tend to agree with something that happened previously. I need to tell you a personal story. So I was living with my girlfriend in the same city 6 years ago. And the story that I'm going to tell you, I promise it's not the only reason why she's my ex. Because probably I'm the reason, right? Now, it was not her, it was me for sure. Not because let's not discuss this further. What? So we are still friends, so all is good. But we were living in two different houses, and we both had cats. And then my problem was that people on my street, they were driving so furiously and so fastly, and I was like, oh my, somebody is going to get my cat killed. I was like, I need to stop that. So I went to the street council, right? And I made this great proposal. You know, I teach communication, public speaking, argumentation. I said, look, guys, I'll now make this speech. How we need to put two big signs, you know, big signs on the road, how people should drive slower, right? I made a big speech about it. And there were 23 people voting, and 22 people voted against it, and only me, only I was voting for the sign. So nobody was like, they were like, no, we are not doing that. But then my girlfriend, she also had cats, but she was not so concerned about her street, which was in the same district but different street. But she decided to troll me, and she said, okay, I'll see if I can make it happen. And I'm like, no, you're not, because I teach communication in our relationship. So it's not you who is going to happen. Okay. And then what she did is she said, what she proposed is that everybody who would want to do that with their own money, that they can put a little sign or their own grass in front of their houses. And 4 people agreed, everybody allowed that, she got 100% support, and she got 4 little signs, and I got nothing. And I was like, okay, so this is not how we're going to play that, right? So I made a new proposal. I made a great speech, you know, with all the persuasive elements, you know, with pictures, with evidence of cats that were being hit by car and like all this. And this time nobody voted. It was, again, nobody voted for me except me, but there were only 90 people voting. Some of the people didn't even vote anymore, right? But only me voting for it. My girlfriend, you know, and the next session, she said, okay, we already have now these 4 little signs, right? What do you say if we somehow get this money, because we already invested something, right? And put the little signs in every yard, you know, just so that we make something out of it, because now nobody really sees that, so it doesn't really make sense. But if we support this idea, let's do that. And people voted for her, right? So then it was the last meeting. I mean, more meetings in between. I made a whole campaign, you know, not even just at the session, even before that. Obviously, for 2 signs, again, nobody voted for me. What she did is, my girlfriend, she in the end proposed exactly what I proposed, 2 big signs. And her argument was, look, we already have all these signs all around the streets. That sounds silly. What if we just go with the same principle, have 2 big signs, everybody will see it, and it's done. And after 3 meetings, right, she had 2 big signs, exactly what I wanted, and I had nothing on my street, right? What was, I mean, obviously that's a funny story, but what is the persuasive mechanism that worked in her case was obviously this principle of consistency. If you convince people to follow your little steps, that if they agree with the little step that maybe is not as controversial, then the only thing you need to show later is, how your position, your next position is following out of this position. And this is how you need to develop the argument. This is why I say that arguments usually consist out of two main things: truths and assumptions. Truths are something that you expect that everybody in the room will believe in, or truths are something that is almost self-evident and will be really hard for people to disagree with. And this is where you start from. You start with self-evident truths. And then you make little logical steps to the first assumption, second assumption, and then only thing that you need to prove is how this assumption literally follow from the truths that they already agree with or have already agreed with. So the idea of argumentation needs to be that you are able to find something, the core of the argument, that people will agree with, or that you will have easy way to prove it. And then you need to focus on how to show that everything else follows from this already accepted truth. And people will have hard time disagreeing with that because of this consistency principle, because people will tend to, because people, as we, if I share the screen again, because people like to align with their previous commitments, right? So make people commit to your arguments, make sure that they agree with some steps, and then make active, transparent and voluntary steps, meaning that you make that you show me where the action happens, how we get from one to second, make it transparent so that people won't think that you're tricking them, and it needs to be voluntary so that they actually confirm it, so that they need to disagree with something, or if they don't disagree, they actually confirm it, right? So try to think of argumentation as such. Okay, I have clash, which is something that I speak a lot about it. And I would say two things. Bigger clashes means bigger impacts, and people really, really like, all around cultures, people like people with strong opinions. It's really interesting. For example, you know what one research showed that I really like, speaking of social experiment. If you are a person with a strong opinion, who do you think will you respect more on a personal level, or which arguments are you going to evaluate as more positive and better? People who are going to marginally disagree with you just on few points, or people who are going to present directly the opposite opinion? The researchers show that even if you have radical opinion, you are always going to evaluate the arguments as well as the personality of the person better if they have strong opinion, right? So we tend to like people who have strong opinions, but it's not just that. And this is, by the way, very interesting because it tells you a lot in when we are arguing, how does that work and so on, right? But why is this important in the debate? Okay. You know, the thing with the debate is that this is one of the rare activities that is not boiled down to compromise. The whole world is about, let's reach the compromise, let's narrow it down, right? And compromise to some extent means the radical tyranny of a status quo, right? In the philosophy, we would call this the normative power of status quo. You know, if we want to reach the compromise, then in the end, just because something it already is, it will all probably stay that because we don't want any radicalism, right? So in the moment, what happens is just because something is like it is, it is not a description anymore. It gains a normative power. It becomes a moral norm, a practical norm. It's even a logical mistake. We call it ease to odd mistake. Just because something it is as it is, we start perceiving it as it ought to be like that. So we need to be afraid. I mean, please don't take this as you need to be radicalized. Just think of compromises are not necessarily good. I really like, I don't know if you know from the social theory, so-called Abilene paradox. This is a paradox of group thinking. It is about the American family who wanted to go to the trip. And they all had very radical opinions where they want to go. And they were like, here, no, I disagree, rah, rah, rah. And then somebody randomly, quietly say, oh, what do we go to the Abilene city? And boy, that's a boring city. And then they were in Abilene, and then it was a shockingly boring city. And then at some point, you know, they were all annoyed. It was boring. It was a stupid trip. Nobody liked it. And then somebody said, why are we here? Who wanted to go to Abilene? And then all the people said, not me, not me, not me, not me. So they literally went to Abilene, although nobody wanted to go to Abilene and nobody enjoyed it and nobody got what they want. So literally everybody lost. So this is what happens a lot in the group thinking, that a lot of times something that nobody wants actually then is the final decision of the group. By the way, just nod with your head. Do you know the BP debate format? Okay. In the BP debate format, you have 4 teams and you have a panel of judges who needs to together decide in deliberation who wins the debate. My theory is that always what happens is the Abilene paradox in this debate. Why? Because judges sometimes totally disagree. First opposition is first, no second, blah, 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 blah. And they're not willing to compromise. No, I cannot give first opposition on the last place because they were the first. And you know who wins in the end? The team who everybody got on the second place. Because everybody is willing to, okay, I cannot do that, but I can make this compromise. So that's a paradox of group thinking. When you make a compromise, in the end, somebody wins that nobody actually thought that should win. Now that maybe can work in political thinking. I'm sure that if you would try to argue for that centrist political wing is the best, and I'm sure there are brilliant arguments for that. If you want to argue for that, then you can make good arguments for this, that it is good, you know, to in between, blah, blah. But speaking of logical argumentation, this is literally a logical mistake, because somebody has arguments that first opposition has win, somebody has arguments that, you know, second government should win, but then in the end, first government wins. That literally means that in the end, the winning team is the one that nobody had arguments for, because of this paradox of trying to get the narrow down the clash, trying to get the compromise. So try to clash big. Try not to be, don't be afraid, you know, to have big ideas on both sides and narrow it down to little technicalities. Clash big. The example that I gave on the other, in the other one of the other sessions, maybe even yesterday, is when I gave them, when the last year Word Schools motion, this house would implement this house would implement women quotas for CEO boards, for example, right? There are 2 strategies that teams usually decide for on the proposition. The strategy number 1 is that they say, we are only going to have women over men when they're equally qualified. You know, when they're equally qualified, we are implementing the priorities and we are taking women. That's fine. That's not a squirrel. That's a brilliant model. Then the second strategies the team have used is, they said, we are implementing 60% of women quotas. We know a lot of male that are capable are not going to get in. We know that we are going to violate the individual right of male to be selected. But we want women in, and we are imposing 60% quotas. I can tell you the statistics. The comparative of who won the debates, obviously, probably we would need a bigger pattern, but this was the whole tournament comparative from 2 tournaments, World Schools Championship, and then the international tournament where I have repeated the motion to see that. The comparative is the 3/4, so around 70 to 70% more teams who decided for one strategy has won on proposition. Which strategy do you think was so much more successful in 2 tournaments, international tournaments? Strategy 1 is when they're equally qualified, we take women, or we take, even if they're a bit less equally, even if they're less qualified, we take women over male to have at least 40, 50, 60, it doesn't matter. So which one, first or this second? Which one do you think was less qualified? This is what Liana says, yes. Anybody else? Second, obviously second, obviously second. I know that the first one seems easy. Why? Because if you say the first one, then they cannot say, oh, but what about man? Oh, what about the meritocracy? Obviously, you totally, get rid of these objections. But what do you think all these teams had as the argument? Their argument was, we are creating the role model for young girls and young entrepreneurs and young women in politics and CEO boards. And I was like, uh, okay, nice argument about the role model, but how are you proving your impact if you're only taking these few little ladies that are equally qualified as men? How are you proving your impact? What's the extent of your impact? On the other hand, the other team had no troubles proving me how big their impact is, because they had 60% of women there in the CEO boards doing things and so on. And they said, look, we are sure in our impacts, we do have our role models, and we are now willing to clash that this impact is more important than violating the right of man. Why? Because they can go to other jobs, they have a lot of other opportunities, they were historically privileged, and we are now only equalizing this. So we are willing to bite the bullet and create a different world on our side and clash big on our side, right? And 75% more team won. Why? Because because it's easier to create impacts with clash. If you narrow down, or for example, we would, last year, actually World School Championship. Liana, were you there last year? I don't remember.
No, I was
You,
not.
I see you everywhere, so I just don't know where you were, where you weren't. You're always there in our minds. The motion was this house would implement youth quotas in politics, right? A lot of oppositions said we would not have youth quotas, we would have a different model, maybe youth party, or we would give some kind of little model, we would give them more money, or this is how we would or we would educate them more. And I'm like, how are you going to show me the big impacts of your case if your clash is, we agree that the politics is problematic, we agree we need to do something, we agree youth is the problem, but we are only having a different model. Create a totally different world, create something different, radically different, so that you will be able to build on your clash and consequentially on your impacts, right? So keep in mind that it's across the culture that people like if you are radical, not if you radicalize and say things that are harmful. I'm saying this within some kind of normality, obviously, within the rational discourse, but as much as possible, try to clash big. Why? Because in the debate, you can do bigger impacts. Last thing that I'm going to talk about is, I have more, but we will need to show that. Storytellers rule the world. This is a quotation by a Plato, and then other philosopher, a recent one, contemporary one, said humans are storytelling animals. We live through creating stories, right? We like to tell each other stories, and we perceive our realities through the stories that we tell. What is important that you are aware is that creating a story is not manipulating reality. You know why? What do I mean by that? Creating a story means that you actually create different reality. If I have different glasses, reality will actually be different for me. It's not that there is, some kind of objective reality that judges know, and now you will manipulate it. By telling me the story, you're actually going to create a different reality. The best philosophical anthropological experiment for this is a simple wine tasting, right? The group of people were tasting wine in a place where some young high school people were drinking wine from, this, how do you call it, plastic red cups and all this. And they taste the wine and they said it's very bad. Half a year later, they gave them to taste the same wine, but it was in a fancy restaurant. They told the whole history of the wine. They told them, the blah, blah, how this wine is important, blah, blah. And they evaluated this wine and one of the best they have ever had. Now, Mike, the same people, the same wine, just different stories. Now my question is, what do you think that these people were lying? Do you think that in first example were people, oh boy, this is such a good wine, but since I'm drinking it here, I will now say, oh, it's bad. And when they were in the restaurant, they said, oh, the wine is bad, but since I'm drinking it, it's such a nice restaurant, I'll say it's good. Did you think they say that? No, they have actually personally perceived it as better and worse in other case. So the taste of wine was actually created. So of course, I'm not, I'm not such a crazy philosopher saying that there is no physical reality. Obviously, there were chemical reaction in your mouth, whatever, you're better at biology than I am, I'm for sure. Of course, the physical reaction were the same because it's the same wine. But our interpretation of this same physical empirical reality is totally different because we saw it through different glasses. And this doesn't mean that you were manipulated. It's simply you perceived it differently. It was a different taste for you. It was actually a different wine for you, right? You were not lying to yourself. You were not making it up. And this is what you need to create in the debate. I'm going to give you two economic examples and then we stop. I have recently read in The Economist, which is, I can't even say right-wing, I can't say, I don't know what's their ideology, but they are more, let's say, libertarian in economic perspective, right? And they said, they had a title, the millennials, they prefer, they cherish, they value their career and enjoyment more than family and children. And I'm like, okay. And it was proven by numbers. So I can't deny the numbers. That's, empirical study. But I then made an experiment and I gave the same study, but I wrote the article for my students. And the title of my article that I wrote, like copying Economist, my title was, unfortunately, we have messed up the global economy so much that millennials cannot afford to create family and children, so they need to take care about their well-being and their jobs and careers. I use the same numbers, the same empirical study. But have you seen how it's a different story that I created with this, right? Totally different. Or for example, to play with this, you can say free market. Oh my, finally we're out of slavery. You can buy whatever you want. You can sell whatever you want, right? Or I can say, oh boy, have we entered the slavery with capitalism. If you want to survive, you literally need to work for 12 hours per day. And because we never have the jobs that you want by the structural necessity, you even need to start doing things that you don't want to do. So in order to survive, you A, need to work, and B, you need to probably work the thing that you don't like. And because we also have this psychiatrist in our society, you also need to enjoy it. Because if you're not enjoy it, you're deemed depressed and not normal and you're sent to a psychiatrist. And that's a slavery for me, guys. The same situation, literally the same situation. But I have just described it through a different glasses, through a different story. That's not argument, but this is like creating reality into a different reality. So I'm not manipulating the reality. I didn't change the numbers. I didn't say that free market is something else that it is. In both cases, I have exactly the same numbers. But my interpretation, the story, the words, the language that I'm using to explain this is different. It's very different if you say, as Nicholas liked to say, don't say capitalism, say free markets, free economy. Don't say climate changes, say climate crisis. Don't say climate warming, say climate heating. Don't say, oh, this is one I like. Don't say climate change skeptics. Because when you say that, I think, oh, these are reasonable people. They don't buy everything they read in fake news, right? They doubt everything. They are skeptics. Say climate skeptics. If you are on that side of the motion, say climate change deniers, ones that deny the official science, right? These are now much less important and big examples, but this is how you can do it, right? Because we perceive our reality, empirical studies and examples through our stories that are being told, try to facilitate that in the debate. Try to start using language and vocabulary that will work in your favor. Okay, so this is it for my side. As I told you, sorry if these were not direct debate advices. I will, this was more like intercultural studies, some business, cultural, academic examples, and how to facilitate them in the debate. Hope it was something interesting and useful. If you have any critiques, suggestions, comments, you can send them to me, to the institute directors, whatever. Otherwise, take 5 minutes, and then I'll ask you to be back in your rooms for your drills. Enjoy, guys. It was nice to be with you.
Thank you.